I'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll have roll call, please.
Councilmembers Miller,
Yes.
Phelipson,
Yes.
Walters,
Yes.
Foley,
Yes.
Mayor Dees.
Yes. Citizen comments. If anyone would like to speak to the council other than what's already on the agenda, now is a good time. Okay, seeing none, we have a public hearing tonight. I will call the public hearing to order. I just kind of run this down. Description, Jeff Kuhn, the city engineer, is going to have a description of the project and explanation of project funding with Lane Hill. And then we'll have some explanations. And then we will take property owner questions. And then we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the city council at that time. So, I don't know, Blaine or Jeff?
Just some logistic things. There is a handout that's available. I think, did you put it on the table over there, Sandy? That has the agenda for the public hearing. It also has a listing of the assessment information that you can look at. That's going to be handy. We have masks, we have hand sanitizer, we have chairs that are spaced out. If you're having a hard time hearing us, let us know, so we can deal with that. And as the mayor said, after we're done presenting the information, everybody's going to have a chance to ask whatever questions you want to ask. The one thing I would tell you up front is that the purpose of this hearing is not to tell you what your assessments are going to be and to set them. The purpose of this hearing is for the city council to hear about a project that we're looking at building, to present that information to you, give feedback to the city council, and at the end of that hearing, the city council will decide whether or not they're going to take the next step in the construction process for a project like this, which would be ordering the plans and specifications to be able to bring this to a bid. Probably sometime in February and March, and at that time we would know more about what the exact costs of the construction are going to be, and then we'd have a better idea what the actual assessments might be for property owners. So that's what the process is. You will have a chance to ask questions about what we're talking about, and I'll turn it over to Jeff. He'll go over, probably on the agenda it talks about the project itself, and then we actually have a list of all the various parts of that, which should include the assessments, and he'll talk through on that.
All right, thank you. As he said, my name's Jeff Kuhn. Everybody hear me okay? Good? All right. This is a aerial photo of the city. It has two of the project areas on there that we're going to be talking about tonight. There is a third, and I'll be talking about that in just a little bit. But basically, we're talking about Columbia Avenue to California Avenue on East 6th Street, okay? So it's going to start at the top of the hill, go down to the bottom of the hill at California Avenue. It's going to be a street utility improvement. It's going to involve curb and gutter replacement, street replacement, sanitary sewer, water main, and a little bit of storm sewer, along with some sidewalks. That's kind of, that's basically that one on 6th Street. Okay. Similarly, we're going to be doing a stretch of Columbia Avenue. Columbia Avenue is going to run from East 7th out to the trunk highway or the frontage road in that vicinity. Again, another street and utility improvement project. Not as many as directly affected residents on that one for services, but still going to be a street and utility improvement, sewer and water. That is a state aid route, so there won't be street assessments on that one. We have to talk about that in a little bit. And then the other project area that we have also that's going to be lumped in with this is Iowa Avenue. And Iowa Avenue, so this section, this is a rural section. So there still will be a street assessment for this. No water on this one's being replaced at this time, that's been deemed okay. The sanitary sewer will be replaced along with some storm sewer on this project. Okay. Just to get into a little more detail on the other project, again, it was kind of stated earlier, water main throughout the project area from Columbia down to California will be replaced, along with the sanitary sewer, and those then have services to the individual property owners, and they'll get replaced out to the right-of-way line, or to your curb stop. All of that will be new infrastructure. The street will be all new infrastructure, replacing all the curb and gutter, along with, at this time, we've got in the project cost to replace all the sidewalk. That'll be something that we can discuss tonight in regards to if that's the wishes of the people or not. So the cost that I associate with this portion of the project, East Sixth Street, is about $1 million right now, estimated. Again, you'll see that on your handout that you probably have in a little more detail. Various aspects of that include, like I said, the sewer, water, and street, curb and gutter, sidewalk. So the other project on Columbia Avenue is about the same cost. We have a little less of the utility services that are going to be replaced here, just because more houses are facing off the side streets than they are on Columbia Avenue. But again, about $1 million in cost here. It's a little bit, really basically the same kind of project that East Sixth Street is going to be. Okay, and so we'll go over those numbers here in just a little bit. Time frame wise, we estimate a project of this size probably is going to generally last the summer. We would envision, if the council moves this project forward, that they'll authorize plans and specs. That'll be put together over the winter time, and we'll look for early spring or late winter letting. And then for the contractor to possibly get started sometime April, May-ish, probably more like May. And then it'll probably last throughout the summer. It'll be a fairly lengthy construction season for this amount of work. Roughly, again, it's about $2.5 million worth of estimated project. Pretty good sized project. We would probably phase the work so that everything isn't tore up all at one time. Luckily, we're not affecting the same street, so we're not affecting, again, long stretches of a long continuous roadway. So access, while right in front of your house when the construction work is happening, is going to be an inconvenience, but it's going to be a little bit shorter lived than it would be if it were for a long stretch of the roadway. So let's get into a little bit of the actual cost. So like I had said, East Sixth Street is about $1 million, of which we say about $500,000 is associated with the street replacement or street assessment cost. Okay, the policy that the city has had here in place is roughly 25% of that cost is going to get assessed back to the benefiting property owners. On a typical stretch here for East Sixth Street, that's probably going to equate to a ballpark figure around $4,100 to just shy of $4,200 for a street assessment cost. Okay. Storm sewer wise, like I said earlier, we do have a small amount of storm sewer that's being replaced on here. That's basically 75% of that cost is bore by the benefiting property owners. So just under $700 for a storm sewer assessment on this particular stretch of the project for 6th Street. Sidewalk I had talked about earlier. Right now, what's estimated as full replacement, and that's 100% property owner, benefiting property owner responsibility, so right around $2,000. 100%. Ballpark figure here right now is about $1,000, or roughly just shy of $20 a foot, running foot on curb and gutter. Sanitary sewer, this is on a per parcel basis or per hookup basis, and it's 75% of the total cost for the sanitary sewer. We're seeing that at around $185,000, $186,000, which would equate to about $4,600 for the sanitary sewer assessment. Water main, similarly, a little less, $4,100. So, total amount estimated right now, again, these are estimated costs, these are not final costs, as Blaine had indicated earlier. If the project were to go forward, the next step would be to have plans and specs drawn up. Once the plans and specs have been approved then by council, they would authorize going to advertise, get bids. Once we have the actual bid costs, then we'd have a better idea where these numbers are at. The council then can decide if things still fall in line. They can move forward at that time. If they feel like things are out of line, that bids come in high for some reason, we can put the halts to it and get back to the people on whether or not we want to move forward with this project or not. Generally, that hasn't been the case in the past, and hope that continues here in the future. So, total amount to be assessed, we're estimating that to be about just under $600,000. Total amount of city cost then is just under $500,000. I'll go over the Columbia Avenue stuff, costs, and Iowa Avenue, and then we can kind of come back to some more questions. Columbia Avenue, similarly, about $1 million. Again, the street costs here are a little bit higher than the 6th Street stuff. It is a longer stretch of street, so that makes sense. Storm sewers, a little bit more. The storm sewer at around $60,000 for this project would equate to roughly maybe $1,000 assessment here for storm sewer for this stretch. The one thing that comes into play on this, again, being state aid, we'll have to look at, see what final numbers come back from the state in regards to participating part of storm sewer for Columbia. That's a difference between, again, state aid is, Columbia Avenue is on a state aid street, E6 is not. Sidewalk, again, that being state aid, that's going to be a total eligible cost for those items to be picked up by state aid, same with the curb and gutter. Sanitary sewer and water main are similar to the E6 street in regards to, there's not as many homeowners along here, but generally the city's policy has been, we kind of do a running average for sanitary sewer and water main assessments, if in fact the unit costs are a little bit greater. This particular stretch here, we've got a little bit more trunk line of sanitary sewer and water main that what the benefiting property owners really would need to pay for. So we're going to prorate that back to what the assessments for are equal to the E6 Street project. Okay. All right. The last project area is Iowa Avenue, and this one being kind of quite a bit different than the other two project areas where it's not really rural residential, or residential abutting it. It's more commercial and rural. The street costs here are estimated to be just under $400,000 or $360,000, excuse me. And this one we probably looked on a more cost per foot basis right now, just to kind of give it an idea. About $23 a foot. Right now, the length of one side of this, I think, would equate to about 530 feet there, just underneath the $44,000 number. That would be basically, if we were to assess all one side, it looked to be about a $44,000 assessment. Okay. Storm sewer, small amount of storm sewer on this one. Potentially a $530 assessment. Again, we'll have to look at that. That's not quite, yeah. Sidewalk, curb and gutter is not on on this project area. Sanitary sewer, about 112,000. And then we're gonna probably do this on a per lot basis, which we've got about 42,000 roughly right now. Total cost is about just over $500,000 on this project. Okay. All right. Talk about project timeframe. Again, if the project were to move forward, that time frame, we'd have a pre-construction meeting with the residents. Generally, we'll have an on-site person available to kind of talk to, get some questions answered, do some advance notification for whether or not the construction crew is going to be in front of your house on a particular day. We could potentially have weekly meetings out on site that if needed. Project more of this size, we'll determine at the time if that's going to be something that's needed or not. Can be flexible and kind of decide that at a later date. I think that's about all I have. I can open it up for questions at this point. And I'd ask maybe to state your name and address, maybe come up to the mic. Is that what we want to do?
Yeah, if you can come up to the mic, that way, you know, we actually record these meetings, and state your name and your address if you have a question. I'm gonna be going over some additional information about funding and special assessments. So if you have any questions about the actual project, maybe ask that now. Anybody?
Jim Albee, we own 409. And the corner there for right-hand turn for trucks is not very manageable, and the boulevard shows it. Is there anything we can do to make that a little more workable for a semi? That plenty down there?
409 Columbia?
Well, 7th Street, 409 7th Street, but the deal's on Columbia, and I believe our water is the only thing that comes off Columbia, which is another question. What do we do? Where are we sitting when sewer comes off 7th Street and water comes off Columbia?
Yeah, so then you would have one assessment as part of this project. Your water, you said, is off of 7th Street?
No, our water is off Columbia.
Okay. So then-
Sewer is off 7th Street, I believe.
Okay. So that would be the case. Generally, what we're replacing is the utilities within the Columbia corridor for your particular situation, and we'd have your water assessment, but you wouldn't get a sewer assessment.
Okay.
But as far as semis turning the corner there, I mean, both of those are state aid roads.
Yeah, but it's not wide enough for a semi to make a corner there. If there's somebody even parking on the other side, they're not gonna make it more than likely. Good truck driver might, but,
So
It's that,
here's East 7,
yeah,
and this is Columbia.
yeah,
So this parcel or this?
the 409, so the one,
that one, that one.
The residential house?
yeah,
Okay, yeah.
okay, yeah.
We'll take a look at it. I think it's a pretty standard radius right now. Really, so they're cutting the corner where they're probably turning
Well,
on.
see, there's that shows like there's a turning lane where you got your vehicle coming down, there's no parking, so there's not, that's coming
This
down.
is an older photo.
Yeah.
It's not like this
Okay.
anymore, yeah. So the center line is actually back into the middle.
Probably, center line's probably on the right side of that vehicle, or pretty close. So when a semi comes and you gotta turn to come down there, and there's somebody at the stop sign, he's screwed.
So the semi turning to get onto,
Yeah.
onto 7th.
Yeah,
Okay, all right, we'll look at that.
okay. It's just a mud hole now, it is everywhere.
Okay.
Any other questions for Jeff? Otherwise, what I'll do is I'm going to cover a couple things with regards to special assessments and funding. As I indicated in the beginning, we're at the step where the city council has to decide whether or not they're going to move forward to plans and specifications where they really find out a lot of the detail of what's going to be happening on this. And before they do that, actually, I have a couple recommendations that I'm going to make to the city council, and I'll talk about them when I'm done talking about special assessments. But in order for us to do this project and fund it, we're going to have to borrow money. And in order to borrow money, we have to use what's called a special assessment bond, a GO special assessment bond. In order to do that, we have to assess at least 20% of the project to the property owners. Otherwise, we're not allowed to do that. And if we can't raise enough money by doing it that way, the only other way we could fund it is to put it to a vote of the people, whether or not they want to pay a general tax for doing a project. But this one is very unique in the sense that, as Jeff described, it's really 3 projects that we're throwing into one big one because you're going to have economy of scale and hopefully we're going to get a much better bid on doing this project. And so you have the one part, which is kind of our standard city street assessment project where you have, 50-foot lots, you have lots of houses, although on this project there is a group of, I don't know if anybody's here from, there's a group of, I think it's 3 houses that have their sewer in the alley behind them, which would not be part of this project. But one of the recommendations that we talked about making is that we at least stub in a sewer connection for those houses. So at some point in the future, they wouldn't get their sewer in the alley. It would just be something that would be available in the future, because that's, we ran into a problem. I think most of you were here when they ran into a problem with their sewer in the alley and petitioned us to actually add it to another project and redo it, and they're paying an assessment on that right now. But then you have Columbia Avenue, which is what we call a state aid street. And so we get funding from the state of Minnesota for our state aid streets. And we have a lot less houses that are connecting to that, whether it's water or sewer. And so then if we tried to assess the actual cost of putting in the sewer that affects them, it would be cost prohibitive to do that. And actually one of the things I shared with the city council in my memo to them on this is that that's the issue that we have on East 7th Street. If you've followed any of the news, there's a lot of people that are interested in getting water and sewer on East 7th Street, but it's so spread out, and the cost of even trying to run it out to them is cost prohibitive. We couldn't assess it to them. We can't borrow the money to do it because we'd have to put it to a vote of the people, and the only hope that we can get on a project like that is to find some additional federal or state funding to be able to help us. But we do have some funding through the state aid system on this, and we're utilizing that funding to help pay for the project, and it brings down the amount of money that we have to borrow in a special assessment bond. And then the third project is even, weirder, because we have Iowa Avenue, and legitimately there's 3 property owners on Iowa Avenue, and 2 of them are tax exempt, but we can still assess them, for a project. One of them's the university, one of them's the USDA Ag Research Center, and the other one's Superior Industries, which pretty much owns the whole side. And so what we're looking at is, and there's very few, we're doing some sewer work there, but there's very few connections to the sewer system. Actually, Superior has one, and the old car dealership has one, and USDA has one, and the university has nothing. And so, but there is a road, and they have 100% of the road side. And so one of the things that we're looking at is assessing them for 25% of the road. And whether or not we'll be able to do that, we'll see what happens when we get to that point, because we've done that in the past, like when we did 2nd Street and College Avenue, the university gets assessed for roads and things like that. And then we have one more piece that comes into play in this one. If you've been following what's happening in the news, we actually just completed a water line project that we ran from Heartland Motors out to Yankee Ridge Road, or to Northridge Drive on Yankee Ridge Road, which is paid for the American Rescue Plan funding that we got. The city of Morris got about $560,000 American Rescue Plan money that we can utilize for water and sewer infrastructure. And the balance of what we used on that project, we're going to put into this one for financing. So we don't have to borrow as much money on this one. And so there's lots of little pieces to this. But one of the things I want to share with you too is, in order for us to assess your property, the city's got to prove that the value of what we're assessing to your property is going to increase the value of your property. We have to be able to do that in court if you choose to appeal the assessment that we're putting on you. So one of the ways that we do that is we have what's called a general appraisal. So the city council has received a general appraisal letter for all three portions of this project. And for the East 6th Street project, the appraiser has indicated that the general appraisal value of this improvement, when looking at the value of the property before it's done and the value of the property after it's done, is between $9,000 and $13,000 for East 6th Street. And so then if we move ahead with the project, and if we do a special assessment, and if you disagree with that, then you have the right to appeal it to court and have a judge take a look at it. And then what we would do is we would do a specific appraisal on your property to show what the value is. And I can tell you that I think we've had maybe a couple over the years that have actually been appealed, but never once did we have one that went all the way through to have a judge rule on it. But that's a process that we've gone through. When it comes to Columbia Avenue, it's a little bit less. It's probably 7 to 11. When it comes to Iowa Avenue, that's pretty much commercial property. And so there is a value though, and so then the appraiser values that in terms of probably a square foot price on that. But that's one of the things that we wind up doing, and you know, if it doesn't look like it's going to work, then we're going to have a hard time doing it. But this is the same value, and I can tell you one of the things that we've learned, if you look at some of the projects we've done in the past, Highland Homes is a good example, down below the high school, North Court, South Court, Brook Street. Those are really good examples of, if you want somebody to buy your property and they turn down the road, and we know 6th Street is very bad. I mean, we've had problems with 6th Street for a very long time. That's the road. We know that the water's old. We know that the sewer's old. You know, the utility guys are dealing with those kind of things. That's what we see. That's how we pick these projects. You know, what we're going to do. We pick them by where we're having problems, and we like to focus on areas that everything is bad. You know, in this case, you know, 6th Street's a really good example of that, and so is North Court and Highland Homes and all those kind of things. So that's a process that we go through when we're trying to figure out, you know, is this something that we can do? And, you know, the recommendation to the city council is the project needs to be done. We can fund it. The special assessments, you know, and Jeff showed what the special assessments are. I think especially in the case of East 6th Street, they're a little bit too high. There's something that we can do, and I'm recommending to the city council that we take sidewalks out of it. Because sidewalks are a property owner's responsibility anyway, and one of the things that we've done this year is we've added a new process of maintaining sidewalks that I think is going to be part of the future for the city of Morris, and that is, you know, everybody's probably seen these guys sawing off the sidewalks around Morris. That's an added maintenance that the city took up, where we're basically looking at all the places where sidewalks are raised, and we're shaving them off at city expense, and then we're leaving the property owners to deal with replacing their sidewalks if they need to be replaced, which is your responsibility anyway. There are still places where sidewalks are dipped, probably because of where a utility line was put in at some point. There are places where sidewalks are raised up next to trees, that we're gonna come and take care of those too. And so realistically, we don't need to replace all these sidewalks at this point as part of this project. And so I'm recommending, if I remember right, that was in the neighborhood of a couple $1,000 on a special assessment. So now instead of 16 something, you're down to 14 something, and you're right in that range of where the appraiser thinks the value of the assessment's going to be for your property. And the one thing that we know is right now values of property are just way up, according to sales and stuff. So those are two things that I wind up dealing with, and the other thing that I'm going to recommend to the city council is that we take a look. On 6th Street there is no storm sewer underground. And one of the things that there might be a little bit, but one of the things that we've been doing on our projects is we've been putting in a really good road base where we put in tile and we put in drainage within the systems. And actually, Jeff, when we talked about it, he dropped out some of the cost. I think he figured it was about $100,000 you dropped out, of the East 6th Street storm sewer. But I'm going to recommend to the city council that we actually put that back into the project when we look at plans and specs, so that we can take a look at that and then maybe look at that when we bid it, to be able to try to figure out what that cost is. Because it's going to save us a lot of work in the future maintaining that road system. Anybody that lives along 6th Street probably knows that the water washes down it and it washes the road out. And that's where drainage comes into play, where it helps you maintain your road. Especially, when was it, 3 years ago, we had a pouring rain in the wintertime. And it's just destroying roads. So that's basically my information. I don't know if anybody's got any questions on that. Yep.
Scott Heinrich, 506 East 9, have a property at 500 East 9. 3 questions. One is, what is so bad on Columbia Avenue? Because you mentioned that you have issues. What are the issues on? Second, are you replacing the curb and gutter and the sidewalks on Columbia? And if you are, why did you grind them off this last summer? Waste the guys 3 days grinding when you could use the money somewhere else. And third, when you got this government, federal money coming in that you used out on Yankee Ridge Road, and you got a little bit left, is that gonna benefit the city or is it gonna benefit the taxpayer?
They're the same.
It's gonna help the city.
We're all the same. The taxpayers of Morris are all the beneficiaries of that funding. So,
And how about this big wad that they just voted on here a week or 2 ago? You gonna get any of that money?
yeah, we don't know. We haven't seen how that's gonna come down yet.
So maybe it would be wise to wait and see.
Because,
Not do anything.
well, and Jeff can answer the question.
Times are getting tough, I'm putting it that way. Times are getting tough.
Oh, yeah,
You know, so, $2 million stuck on 53 properties. So, but I wanna know why Columbia's getting rid of them.
Yeah, so Columbia Avenue is, sanitary sewer needs to be replaced and the water main needs to be replaced. That's one of the reasons. The other aspect is the street surface is failing. Is it as bad as East 6th Street? Maybe not, but the utilities underneath it need to be replaced. the sidewalk will be replaced as part of this project, yes.
Is there any chance of moving that sidewalk over to the curb and gutter?
The sidewalk along Columbia Avenue is already adjacent mostly to curb and gutter.
Well, I mean, all of it. Are you gonna change it all over there?
That's something that we'll have to work out on the design
Sure be
process.
nice. City clean the sidewalk instead of me.
So we'll have to have that discussion at the city staff level. Something for them to consider.
I'm just doing this as a general, I'm trying to sell the house. But then I got an offer on the house and then bang, the same day I get the offer, I get a assessment notice. So I'm obligated to share that. And all that hangs in the balance. Balance, how do you say it? Balance?
Balance.
But, I'm just here for information, that's all.
Well, and to answer the one question, as far as, you know, I've had people say to me before, why doesn't the city just pay for this? You are the city. We're doing this for you, and in the end, if we don't assess it out, we can't borrow the money to do it ourselves as a overall city. We're not allowed to do that. So when it comes to this federal money that's coming in, you know, what it's gonna do is it's gonna alleviate some of the taxes that are gonna wind up getting charged. Because some of this is gonna wind up being funded through a general obligation tax. Some of this is gonna, because the city's picking up a portion of it, some of it's gonna be funded through utilities. So the utility system, whatever the city's share of water and sewer is, will get picked up by utility rates, and all the ratepayers wind up paying for that. But you know, we were going to do this project this year, construction-wise, but we didn't have the hearing last year because we didn't have any clue how people were going to fare through COVID with regards to, you know, all the different.
You still haven't gotten over that.
Yeah, so then the question is, I don't know how many notices we sent out. I think I counted 9 people here. You know, what do you want us to do? That's what the purpose of this hearing is. Do you want us to fix the roads or not fix the roads?
I'd like them fixed, but I don't want you to spend my money. You're gonna get some from Biden.
Well, yeah, it's not your money. It's the city's as a whole money.
What are you gonna waste it on then? You're not gonna do it for infrastructure.
It's gonna pick up the city's share of this, is what it's gonna pick up. You know, and the other thing that, you know, is important to understand is that there's a number of people in this community that are paying assessments, you know, for their projects. And so then we have to be very careful that we're not, you know, giving a special benefit to one group of people just because of a moment in time. And so it's a balance of what we're trying to do. And I have no idea what's going to happen with the new federal stimulus. I've seen the numbers that the state of Minnesota they're going to wind up getting out of that. Whether or not they trickle it back down like they've done before, I would guess there's going to be money that's going to come down in all kinds of areas like transit, airport, state aid roads, all kinds of stuff. And then once we see that, you know, we'll be able to figure out how that's going to factor into everything that we're doing. And that's what we've been doing. You know, there's a number of projects that we're doing where, you know, the runway extension out at the airport, 100% funded by federal.
Lane, this Columbia Avenue project, what's the assessment per unit on that?
So,
I only see the assessment per unit for the 6th Street, is that correct?
yeah, so the Columbia, the street assessment, there won't be one.
Correct.
Okay? And there won't be a sidewalk one, and there won't be a curb and gutter one.
I see it's like 100, almost 108,000, and how many units do we have on Columbia?
So there's a mixture, there's, like 9 houses that have sanitary and like 11 houses that have water. So some may only have one of those utility assessments,
Okay.
the vast majority will probably have both. So that's where I would look at, and then plus you're gonna have to maybe add in a storm sewer cost. So if you
add
total the
those three
storm,
together,
the sewer and the water, that would be, what,
9,
about
it's
9,000,
46
just
and
shy of
41, so
10,000.
48.
Yeah, right,
And 1,000 for the storm,
Yeah.
or 1,100, so yeah. Good.
okay? So that's a short answer to your question.
Yeah,
That's
and
no problem.
the sewer and water assessments, we made them the same amount as Sixth Street because that's the best,
Yeah.
that's the best idea of what it would normally cost. You know, and in years when we don't have any kind of projects whatsoever, we still calculate what's called an average. If somebody builds a brand new house and they want to connect up to the city system and there's no construction project, they'll pay that running average cost. And actually the county's gonna wind up paying a cost to hook up to the new water. Jim Riley and Son's gonna pay a cost to hook up to the new water, and that's kind of the way that we're doing with that. And in the future, if there's development off of that line, then we'll factor in something on that.
Blaine, I'd like to speak to Scott's point about the infrastructure money. Of course, we've had experiences in the past, and I'm not gonna say that it's gonna happen in this particular case, but if you recall, on the Oregon Avenue project, we had a shovel-ready project, and the state was out looking for shovel-ready projects. Well, we were the beneficiary of that, because we had that project ready, and if I recall, Blaine, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we benefited from that because we had that project ready to go, and we ended up getting some extra funding. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, we got $1 million from the federal government on that
And
project.
only because we were in a position,
And that helped pay for that new storm sewer upgrade that we did there.
so we know there's money coming, but, I'm not gonna sit here and say, Councilmember Walters said. I'm just saying it could happen.
Yeah, so Columbia Avenue, we're already kind of taking into account the state aid portion and that, whether that additional money is gonna come through state aid, some of it probably will. They're more than likely gonna allocate out to all of their current funding mechanisms that they already have in place, whether it's PFA and all these other MPCA, all those sources of money, right? And that's where it's probably gonna go. There might be these one-time allocations directly to the cities, again. That's a crystal ball that we don't have,
Right,
so.
that's what I was talking about.
But if we don't have the groundwork done now,
Correct.
when it comes up, when this
Right.
money comes available and we haven't done our legwork to get to that point, we're not gonna get it. So we need to move forward now to have plans that are ready to get that assistance. That's gonna benefit everybody in the community.
Well, and we do have, that last right of refusal, correct, Blaine,
Correct.
too, and that if the bids come up higher than we thought, we can still squash the project at that point. So
Right. Yeah, so the final decision will be made once the bid opening takes place sometime probably in March on what we do.
When is the good time to do the project? When is failing? Do we wait until you have sewage backing up in your basement? Or you got the water breaks? Or is the best time to do it before we get to that point? And our belief is to get it done before our residents have that problem with things backing up in their basement or we have the water breaks.
I'm just curious, of the residents that are here along Sixth Street, what's your feelings on sidewalks? I'd just like to get a pulse for what you're thinking. No? Yes? I mean, it helps us make a decision if I kinda know what you're thinking.
We got one, we had one thumb down. Okay.
Thumb down.
One thumb down? Okay.
But we're gonna keep the existing sidewalk. It's not like we're not gonna have sidewalks, correct?
Right,
Yeah,
we
we're just
went,
gonna-
we went and looked at them and,
Spot replacement where the service happens.
and then all the handicap crossings will be brought up to the standard that are supposed to be there. And that's one of the things, we did 2 studies, one on sidewalks, one on the actual crossings, and what needs to be done. And so whenever we're doing a project, they'll be brought back up to the normal ADA standards for handicapped accessibility. And yet, I know what you're saying about sidewalks, with regards to the concrete cutting, but it's like, you can't, we wanted to get the main routes done completely, you know, and that was a good first start. So I don't know how many actual points were on that road, but it's not going to cost us any more. Yes, it might have been wasting some money doing that, but in the economy of scale of, you know, having these people do the work, you know, that's the whole reason why we went to the concrete cutting, is to try to piecemeal in sidewalk fixes. Is not a good way of doing it, and so we focused on sidewalks in the entire town, looking at this process and not necessarily picking this out. In hindsight, we probably should have done something different.
I have a question. I'm Jess Larson. I live at East 6th Street, 311. I'm not going to quibble. The street's a mess. Actually, I would say there are sinkholes on Montana Avenue underneath the pavement as well. Since I've lived there, I've stepped in them off the edge of the curb. But my question is that the residential span from Columbia to Oregon, is that right? No, California. What?
California, all the way down, California,
The
yeah.
houses are fairly modest, smaller, less showy houses, and I think my concern is, in the assessment, is it gonna be equitable to other assessments across the city that other homeowners share with housing in that range of value? A lot of houses on East 6 are college rentals, potentially in different shape than the permanent residence houses, but, I mean, is it, I don't think the city will do this, but is it equal to other assessments so that we can maintain the ability to sell? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think
Fair
the answer to that is yes, because the appraiser, I mean, when we hire an appraiser to appraise it, what we do is we literally take pictures of every section of road as we're going along. So when the appraiser comes out and looks at the property, he knows what the houses are, he knows what the values are, he knows what this kind of improvement's gonna mean to them. That's what they specialize in doing that. So I think the answer is yes, they're taking into account the kinds of houses. You know, when we're down below the high school, you know, it's a little bit better quality of house, but then at the same time, those yards were bigger, and I think the assessments reflected that because they had more curb. I mean, these are 50-foot lots.
Right.
You
But I
know,
think people
as opposed to
probably
100.
more or less wanna know that everybody's in the same boat, and that's comforting, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so you know, that's what we have to try to do. So that's a very good question.
And the costs we're talking about now are the engineer's estimates. When we get the bids in March, yeah, like Jeff and Blaine are saying, they could be higher, they could be lower, they could be right on, and hopefully the last few years have been quite a bit lower, so hopefully we get some good competitive bids and they're lower, which will drop the costs for everybody.
Any other questions? Appreciate you coming.
Did you say which houses on 6th Street don't drain into the alley? I maybe missed that part. I'm curious.
Most of them come to 6th Street. There's, I think, a few on the
It's-
north side.
It's the first ones closest to Columbia Avenue on the corner. They have their sewers in the back.
Okay, so it's just that block, the 400 block?
Yep,
Okay.
I think it's
Just the top three houses.
three of them.
Columbia, Jess.
Yep.
Up the alley,
Okay.
on the same side as.
My consultant told me that.
His consultant. I thought maybe we'd see Ed here.
Okay, so is there any other, anything that come before?
I
the-
don't think there's, unless you have any
Public hearing?
questions as part of the public hearing, otherwise you can close it and then we can take up the resolution.
Okay. One last call for comments or questions on the public hearing. I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the council for discussion or action on the resolution.
And I would just reiterate, you know, my recommendation is that you go ahead and pass the resolution authorizing the plans and specifications. We take the sidewalks out, but we take a look at the stormwater drainage. You know, and then we can figure out how we're gonna pay for that.
If there's a homeowner that would choose to do their sidewalk, they still have that option, correct? At the time or
Well,
not?
Yeah, so if we're gonna replace the sanitary and water service up to the property line, there's still gonna be sidewalk quantities for bid items. So
Okay.
that would be, the answer to your question there is yes.
All right.
Yeah, it'd be a great time to do it, because there's gonna be a concrete vendor who's gonna be in town doing it.
Blaine, when you say that we come back with storm sewer, is that going to be assessed at the 75% level to the homeowner as it is?
I don't know.
Right.
It's,
I'm looking at the numbers here, and according to the estimate, 9 to 13,000 added value, and even dropping the sidewalk, we're at 14.6. So we.
So we'll look at that option. I
Yeah.
don't discount what Blaine's trying to add back in. I also think we might just look at potentially some valley gutters to intercept some of that drainage, and maybe take it in a different direction than what it's, instead of it all running laterally down the hill, maybe we'll send it out to one of the cross streets, potentially. I don't know. We'll look at that, so.
So there won't be actual storm sewer under the East Sixth Street?
well, I think we wanna look
I
at
think
doing
we'll
it
look at
under
that
the
as an
street,
option. Yep. Yep.
you know, and
I
then.
think that's what you're talking about, is.
Yeah,
the
and
option to
I,
get it.
we just, I just, you know, I got really nervous looking at the assessments because they just seem like they're too high. And if there's a way that we can try to figure out how to bring them down a little bit with storm sewer, you know, one of the things Jeff suggested, and I hadn't had a chance to look at it, is we do have a storm sewer utility that's there for admin. And at one point, we're talking about, I think there's, I don't know how much money's sitting in there, but, you know, maybe there's possibility to put a little bit of that money towards making this happen. Sometimes it gets hard when you don't have enough properties to be able to pay for what you know you need to be doing.
Right.
And so we just maybe have to get a little bit creative doing that. But for this purpose, we're gonna look at it and see what that means, see what it would cost. And then when it comes back, you know, it could be that, you know, even when we bid it, although you don't wanna mess around with those bids too much with the alternates. Just because, you know, the thing I'm nervous about with bids is companies being able to get everything that they need. You know, this whole economy we're in right now with supply chain problems and stuff like that. You know, it turned out really well for us on the water line project because they're able to get that pipe, you know, when they needed it, and that was a short fuse kind of a project, and it's done pretty much, other than the cleanup. So we lucked out on that, but I say just look at it, you know, because that's the way we've been doing all the other projects. And if you look at the one thing I would tell you is that drive down and look at North Court, South Court, Brook Street, because when I drove down those streets, when we started the process of doing the appraisal, it's like if a realtor brought me down this road to buy a house, it was the same way when I came back to Morris, was when we started looking at Highland Homes. And I drove down that street and it's like, man, oh man, what is going on here? You know, it looks terrible. Everything's falling apart, and that's above ground. And then you find out that there's no drainage in there. That's the one project that I got compliments from the public on. It's like, thank you for putting in the drainage, because now we don't have water sitting in our backyard. And if it's sitting in the backyard, it's probably sitting on the street. And if it's sitting on the street, it's going to destroy it. And that's the kind of stuff that we want to try to figure out now so that we don't make that mistake moving forward.
Yeah, same thing over on West Ninth too, Blaine.
Yeah.
You know, I know we received at least 2 or 3 compliments from the homeowners
Yeah.
along there. That whole project there turned out really well.
I agree, we need to leave the stormwater system in place and deal with it. It makes our roads last longer, and we've been assessing the other people along the way for the storm. I mean, when things have happened, we've assessed property owners along, and it's just part of the project that we need to keep doing.
As far as the assessments, I know we haven't done a project, major project for a couple years, but maybe going back to the last 2 or 3 projects and looking at the assessments that we did for them and
Yep.
compare them, because, you know, there's a different economy now, but, you know, compare them a little bit and look at that, and we may have to do some adjustments. I like what you said, Blaine, about, when we do projects like this, we wanna get it done right and do it the right way. I don't think there's really room to cut corners. So I think we need to do it the right way.
I will move on that resolution ordering the preparation of plans and specifications for the East Sixth Street project.
I will second.
Any further discussion?
Just really quick, one note. I had one call from somebody that couldn't be here because they're out in California for a funeral, and I talked to the person on the phone. They were satisfied with what I was telling them.
Cool. Any other discussion? We'll have roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Solly,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Jollickson,
Yes.
Wallers,
Yes.
Mayor Heath.
Yes. And we have reading and approval of minutes from 11/9 regular meeting.
I'll move on the regular meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And the condensed version of the minutes.
I will move approval of the condensed version minutes from the 11/9 meeting.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And we have audit of city bill. We have the consent agenda, which I will move approval of, and it consists of the audit of city bills, gambling reports from Morris Hockey for September and October, the October 13th library board minutes, and the revenue and expenditure report.
And then there was one addition. Final pay estimate for the airport phase 1.
Okay, I will rescind my motion for the consent agenda, and I'll make a motion to add the payment estimate that's at your place. What's it for?
It's the final payment for phase 1, which was all the work that was done to prepare the base for the runway extension. They had some items that they had left to do, and now we're just closing that one out.
Okay, so I make a motion to add item E under consent agenda, the final payment.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Now I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda consisting of those 5 items.
I will second.
We have any discussion or questions or concerns of any of the items on the consent agenda?
Blaine, I just have one question regarding, I read through the library minutes. One thing that would be helpful for me, I see in there's discussion in Ann's request for an $11,300 amount to replace a deteriorating book browsing bin. I guess it would be helpful for me if I knew what kind of a system, upgrade that they're gonna do there. I mean, I'd feel a lot more comfortable if I make a decision on spending that kind of money, if I know what we're buying, So if somehow she could tell us what it is, so that when we get to our budget, final budget, I can make an informed decision on that money.
Yeah, I can talk to her and get, she's probably got photos and things like that of what she's replacing and what she's getting. Yep.
It must reach up and grab the book off the shelf for him too, or something. 11,300, it's quite a bit of money. Just kidding.
Very possible. Any other comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We have no petitions, requests, and communications. We have a resolution setting polling places for 2022.
Just one note with that, it's a requirement in state law now that we have to set our polling places by December, the end of the year, and this does not supersede what we're actually gonna be doing, because we're gonna be looking at redrawing our ward and precinct boundaries, and then part of that, we would be able to make a recommendation on polling places, but I'm pretty sure they're gonna stay the same anyway. So you're gonna see this come up again. You might say, well, I thought we already set our polling places, and it's like, well, that's the one law, and now there's another law that we have to follow, so. And they're the same ones we've been using for years.
At what point do we do that? Do we set those boundaries? What's the time frame?
It's probably gonna be, we might start before, the state has to redraw their lines in March, I believe, is the time frame for them redrawing their lines. I don't think we're gonna be affected by the state redrawing lines. The congressional district, we're not on the edge of it. The Senate district for Western, we're not on the edge of it. For Backer, we're not on the edge of it. You know, so I think what's gonna happen is Morris is gonna be exactly where they were before and all those things. And then once they're done, then that starts the whole process of doing all the other lines that get redrawn. And we have to do it by ordinance, so it could be that we start before they finish. And then the only thing would be if for some reason we all of a sudden realize that something affected us, and then we'd have to go back and redo it. But we have to do an ordinance, and an ordinance takes probably about 60 days from start to finish. And it'll be an ordinance to reestablish our ward boundaries and our precincts based upon the 2020 census. So I'm thinking maybe sometime in February.
Okay.
You might see something come to the table.
And at that time, and I know this one says, and we're gonna relook at this one, but it says precincts 1A and 1B, 2A and 2B. Do you think when we redraw, we're probably gonna whittle those down just to 3 precincts?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You know, I was at a meeting last Thursday, and I was talking to Little Falls, and their 9,600 population, they have 3 wards and 3 precincts. And we have 3 wards and 6 precincts. And so, and they have 3 polling places for 9,600 population. And so what's gonna happen, we have 3 polling places, they work. So I'm thinking we'll have 3 wards, 3 precincts. And, you know, and the other thing that was mentioned as a side note is that they predict about 50% of the voters are probably gonna vote before Election Day. In the next general election.
Sure.
You know, and we've seen that happen where a lot of voters are just voting early, and so that makes it less, well, it's not stressful right now in our polling places, because we have 2 precincts voting in each polling place the way it is, but yeah, that I can tell you that's what the recommendation's gonna be.
Okay, and that, okay, now, okay, one other question, just, so then, like, our precincts, like, or our voting places, like, right now, you know, I may live, you know, in this precinct, and you may live in this precinct, except that you would vote for somebody else because there's a split. Is that gonna happen? Like, mainly it's gonna be, county commissioner.
Yeah, I
mean,
guess I'm not sure.
Will the county commissioners have to?
They cannot split a precinct.
Okay, so they'll have to follow whatever.
They'll have to follow whatever our lines are. So realistically, you're gonna go from 4 county commissioners representing the city of Morris to 3. And that's the way it's gonna work. And we're over half the population of the city, or the county, the
Right.
city is. And
Right.
so realistically, you know, that's the way it should be lined up. The only way we got split out now is because we have 6 precincts, and they can't split a precinct, but they can take a precinct. you know, and,
Right.
and that's kind of the way it works.
Okay, thank you.
And you'll see, you know, we have, you know, Sandy and I have talked about this, and we have the maps, we have all the numbers, and we know where the lines are now. You're supposed to be very methodical on how you do this, and it doesn't take into consideration, you know, where county commissioners are or anything like that. It's just the city trying to split it up, and like I said, we have 3 good polling places that we've used for a long time, and we just have to look at where all the numbers are, you know, and I said it before, the nice part is, I think the university had like 600, and I don't know if you remember what that number was, Sandy, but just on the campus alone, there's like 650 people that were part of the census, you know, so that's a number that, we have numbers for every block in the
Sure.
city.
Good,
Yep.
good, thank you. Did we get a
Not yet.
motion on that?
Yeah.
I will move resolution setting the polling places for 2022 as listed, and as the 3 listed here for us.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Thank you, Blaine, for that explanation.
Yeah.
We'll have roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Wallace,
Yes.
Pellickson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Solly,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes. City manager report. Start with Morris Floral.
So I sent you a memo that said nothing had happened since the last time you met and talked about it, and I can update you that everything has happened since the last time you met. So, as of right now, it's my understanding that, the owner is out of the building, that the owner is moving into a new place to run his business, that is he's moving into a new place to live, and that there is, I haven't seen as of today, that there's probably a purchase agreement from a developer to buy his property. And so I think he's pretty much out of it. You know, we gave him till the 23rd to either secure the building or demolish it, and he just, he's out of it. And so then I was asked the question, well, if somebody buys that property, what do they need to do to satisfy the city? And I said they need to secure or demolish the building. You know, that's who I have no idea who the owner is. I'm assuming there's a signed purchase agreement for this, but he is out of there. I think somebody said they saw him. I've seen him going back and forth to different places, but it's my understanding he moved into Jen Riley's building on Main Street. That's where he's gonna operate his business out of, and then he moved into an apartment. So I don't know that we need to do anything right now further, other than to find out who the new owner is and work with them. I know Cheryl Kuhn has been kind of working the back doors with possible development grants and stuff like that on that property. But it still sits as a property that needs to be dealt with. And like I said, securing the building would mean to lock it up and close up everything that somebody could get into, whether it's the roof or windows or, you know, the back garage door is wide open, all that, you know. That's what we'd do if we took it over, is we'd literally plywood anything that was open to the fresh air, where kids or critters or whatever could get into it. And in preparation for when it needs to be demolished, I have no idea what the plan is for it, but.
I see there's been a for sale sign on it since
Yep.
the weekend, and like you say, it's just good to see that progress is being made. That was our goal, and
Yep.
with us not having to get our hands into it, it looks like just the pressure to make things move is working. So hopefully it continues to progress.
Great, I agree. City manager newsletter.
So, the only other thing, I actually brought a picture for you and put it on the desk so you can see it, but Otter Tail Power, you know, we've talked before about Otter Tail Power and charging stations, and we were notified by Otter Tail Power Company that they are gonna start developing charging stations within their Otter Tail Power territory. And you know, the 2 places they're looking at was the liquor store parking lot and our main downtown parking lot. So what that picture shows you is you can see kind of a blacked-in square. That's an area that they'd like to put in a charging station. So it'd be both a fast charging station and then have a level 2 charging station in it. And it's in a downtown parking lot. They would own it. They'd be responsible for it. All the costs are their costs. And it's the next step in the electrification of vehicles in Morris and in the state and stuff, that you have to have these stations so people could come. So if somebody from out of town, wanted to come to Morris, they would see this on a map and they'd be able to come there and park their car and go to a movie, go to a restaurant, go to a coffee shop, go to the Met Lounge, whatever, and get their car charged. So I'll throw that out to you. If you don't like that, let me know, because they want to know if we're interested in moving forward with this.
This is the area you're talking about right here?
Yep.
And do
So-
they have to dig up anything, or?
Oh, they'd probably have to run power to it and
So
yeah,
what do
they
they do, because isn't that whole area then have the green?
there's some green stuff in
So
that
that
island.
comes out?
So some of that would come out, but only where the charging station, and we would work with them to try to figure out how that's gonna look. I don't know if you've been out to the Rock. They have a charging station out there. They're fairly small, they're not, I've been to fast charging stations. They basically are a pedestal that have the electric power coming up into it.
What do you mean the green space?
Well, isn't there,
There's
the.
landscaped islands.
Landscaping islands all there?
In the islands, but not between the parking,
No,
just here.
no,
Just in the
just in
island.
the middle.
Yeah, so
Yeah. Just the ends.
Oh, okay, but not in the middle.
No, not in the middle.
Okay.
I think the only place that has something in the middle is over here,
Okay.
close, I think.
there's some trees on the ends, there's some
Yeah,
grass and.
There's end features, but not,
Not in
I don't
there.
think there's anything in between there.
Yeah, once they're completed, they're minimal
Yeah.
invasion. I'm just thinking that, if they have to tear up the whole thing to put in those, maybe find a different spot.
I like it.
Yeah, I ran it by the Morris Model Group, and they thought it was a pretty good idea to do that. And, that's probably a good location. The liquor store is a little bit more crowded over there, and maybe out in the open too much. There's, this is a little bit more protected. So the plan is for them to do the construction next year.
Would you like any action on this?
Well, I'd like a motion recommending that we move forward with that. I just got it yesterday. There's a couple last minute things that came in.
I'll make a motion to, recommend Otter Tail to move forward on this.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
And then I would just add one more thing, just because these things are coming in. One of the last things Chris Watkins did before he left was he wrote a Clean Energy Resource Team grant application. You probably heard us talk about this sustainability walk path thing where we would highlight all the different things in town, like the university's Green Prairie Residence Hall and the wind turbines and all that kind of stuff. So they did in Zarbeck, where they had signs on the buildings and stuff. So he wrote a grant to be able to work on that, and we got an email yesterday that they approved it. So it's a $5,000 grant to work on some signage and mapping and stuff, and that is something that we want to see done as part of the Morris Model projects. And now we have 4 buildings with solar on them, so there's even more stuff than we thought we're gonna have. So that happened, and I would just answer any other questions you might have on the newsletter.
You think maybe we should put a sign up by that bike path there that says this is not city property? Isn't, that the one that goes under the that 59
Yeah.
that you keep getting questions about, and we've said over and over that that's not our.
Yeah, we've mentioned that
responsibility.
it's MnDOT's, and actually the MnDOT Assistant District Engineer contacted me because people are calling MnDOT to find out about it. And it needs to be regraded, you know, because there's not enough elevation drop from the bottom of that structure to get the water, and they know that, and they're putting it on their schedule to do that. But yeah, I've been through there a couple times this year, but it was a drought,
Right.
so you didn't have to worry about it. But it is, somebody said, well, what's gonna happen in the wintertime when people slip and fall? And we don't maintain it in the wintertime, so, they know about it, they're working on it, and actually, we talked about, this sidewalk system coming around on 9 and coming back around through the 59 bypass area along the south side of Birch Street and tying into that. So, that's definitely something I got a call from the assistant engineer, and she was very nice about it and wanted to make sure if anybody has any other questions to give her a call. And so I put her email up on the wall in front of my desk that, I have her direct number so that we can call her. Anything else?
Any other comments or questions on the city manager report? Anything else to come before the council? All right, very good, last meeting. Again, that mic does not pick up very good when somebody's.
Yeah, I think we just have to get a better mic. These are higher quality mics than that one. And
Yeah.
actually, I was gonna try,
I-
we do have a PA system here. So if somebody couldn't hear, actually, I got the microphone on it's the old senior citizens PA system. So there's a plug-in right behind Sandy and Aaron here that if we needed to use a PA, we could do it. But I think it just needs a new mic.
Okay. All right, anything else? Meeting adjourned.